Minister, DM, Commissioner, DDG, and Chief Directors, thank you very much for leading us in this engagement. And to members of the media, thank you very much for joining us this morning. My name is Siya Koza. My only responsibility here is to just facilitate the engagement between you and the Minister. We have called this briefing because we've received quite a number of queries that relate to Home Affairs on the Thabo matter. And the Minister said that we should then start by engaging with you on this matter. Just to get an indication, are we ready? All right. Yeah, without further delay, I'm going to request, oh, sorry, before we get there, I'd like to introduce the panel to you. On my immediate right, it's Chief Director Mdntv. He is in charge of the Inspectorate Unit. That is the unit that deals with deportations and law enforcement of immigration laws. Next to him is Advocate Connie Moyitse. She is the Deputy Director General responsible for counter-corruption. At this point in time, she is acting for the civic. She's the acting chief deputy director general for civic branch. We then have the deputy minister, Mr. Nzuza, the minister, Dr. Aaron Motsoaledi. Next to him, we've got the commissioner of the Border Management Authority, Dr. Mike Masiapato. And on my far right, we've got Albert Mutsaung, who is the provincial manager for Gauteng. With those formalities being sorted, I would like now to invite the Minister to address you. Thank you.
There's no space for me here. Let's see. Get me spaces. Thank you, Program Director and Spokesperson of the Department, Mr. Siya Kosa. My colleague, Deputy Minister of Home Affairs, Mr. Nzuza, the Commissioner of the Border Management Authority, Dr. Nakampe Masiapato, Home Affairs officials here, led by Advocate Moyitse, who, as it was said, is now acting head of civics because the head is on leave, and Mr. Mdntv as the head of law enforcement. He's the immigration officer who is sent to Tanzania to bring the people, because the Tanzanians will not release them to the police because it was a matter of deportation. They demanded an immigration officer, and that's why we sent Mr. Mdntv. He's here with us today. Absent is the DG, Mr. Toby Makode, who is attending a FFPLUS meeting, which is to be addressed by the President, so we accused him. Members of the public listen through various platforms, members of the media, ladies and gentlemen, good day. We thank you very much for coming to our briefing, and we wish to take you through the aspects in the Thabo and Nandipha'S Magudumana story. When the story broke out in the public, we, without being conducted, because there was not necessary, realized that we are actually involved, because in the final analysis we are responsible for identities of people found within the borders of the country. So we looked into our systems to look for details about Thabo Bester. Now I want to inform you that Home Affairs has 3 databases of people who are legally, and I want you to underline that. We have got 3 databases of people who are legally in the country. I've told you many times that anybody who is here illegally, you can't find them on any database because we don't even know them. The first database is the National Population Register, abbreviated NPR. The second is the National Immigration Identity System, abbreviated NIIS. And the third is the Visa Adjudicating System, abbreviated VAS, VAS. In the NPR, the National Population Register, it registers birth, it registers marriage, it registers death, it registers ID and passports for all South African citizens, for citizens only. The NIIS, National Immigration Information System, it registers asylum seekers and refugees. That means those who are registered, who came to our registration centers and announced their presence in the country. They are registered on as. Unfortunately, the NIIS does not register birth, death, or even marriage. And it's something that we are busy trying to correct because it's an anomaly, but it has always been like that. Then the last system, the VAS, it registers everybody who is within the borders of the country and came through a visa. And you are aware that we have got 17 visas or permits. Any one of those who came, whether it's a tourist on a tourist visa or relative work visa, you'll find them on VAS. Now let's come to Thabo Bester. The first point of call when you identify somebody within the country, you go to the NPR, you first assume that is here because he's South African. So your first point of call is the NPR. In the NPR, we found only 2 Thabo Besters in South Africa. One is a young man of 19 years that he has already presented himself to the police when he heard that there is a Thabo Bester who is wanted. So he presented himself, he said, here I am. The police confirmed that he's not the person they are looking for. He's not the person who escaped from Bloemfontein Correctional Service Facility. Now we then have to go to the other 2 databases that registers people who are not South Africans. We found nothing. In other words, we did not find any Thabo Bester there. We then heard from you in the media that this man is using the name Thapelo Ngwana or TK Ngwana. So we switched our search to Thapelo Ngwana because Thabo Bester was drawing blanks. And our system revealed 16 Thapelo Ngwanas on the National Population Register. But none of them fitted the picture of the man who escaped from prison. We say none of them fitted because we have got their photos in the National Population Register. As we put their photos and fingerprints and all that, we didn't have to go to fingerprints. The photos were just clearly showing this is not the man that we are looking for. I must tell you that we were stuck. We were very stuck. Even the name of Thapelo Ngwana, we went back to the NIIS and the VAS, and we found quite a number of people from Malawi, from Lesotho, who are calling themselves Nkwanas. Others write with a W, others with an O. We searched all those, and none of the pictures that appeared fitted this one. So we're really stuck, and we actually concluded at that time that Thabo Ngwana is an illegal immigrant in South Africa because he can't be found anywhere on any system that we are having. We're about to conclude that when we learned from TV that there's a lady who appeared on TV and declared that is Thabo Bester's mother, we decided that maybe that could be the clue. We paid her a visit, and indeed, we paid her a visit to Home Affairs. Indeed, she insisted that she's the mother of Thabo Bester. She even gave us his date of birth and told us that she gave birth to this gentleman at Chris Hani Baragwanath Hospital on the 13th of June, 1986. I've seen on several media that he was born somewhere between 1983 and 1986. He was actually born on the 13th of June 1986. And indeed, we rushed to Bara Hospital and checked in their archives. And what this lady told us is true. Thabo Bester, if you go to archives in Chris Hani Baragwanath Hospital, you'll find him in the labor ward of the hospital. The date on which he was born and who gave birth to her and all that. So Thabo Bester does exist actually as Thabo Bester. And the mother in the records at Chris Hani Baragwanath Hospital was recorded as Macy Bester. But now what confused us, if you remember in this TV interview, who was interviewing us? Is Celine there? Yes. She said she has got 4 children, including Thabo Bester. When we went to the National Population Register, indeed the 3 children were there, but there was no Thabo Bester. And so when we visited her, we had to quiz her about this issue. That on TV you mentioned 4 children, you told us you delivered Thabo Bester at Baragwanath. We went to check. The records are there, it's true. But why are all your children appearing on your system in Home Affairs, but not him? She actually explained how it happened. She was born in 1965. To a lady whose name was Magagule, not Bester. Maybe let me not confuse, because we actually were able to develop a family tree here to show who is who, because fortunately our system, our National Population Register does try, it's not perfect, but it tries to draw a family tree for any individual who registered there, for the simple reason that on your birth certificate, we try to write the name of your mother, the name of your father, and then your name. So once we write them, the system will take the name of this child on the birth register and put you in your record as a mother. In other words, if you have got record with us on the National Population Register, the day you register a child, in other words, take a birth certificate for that child, the system automatically pushes the name of the child under you. And that's why we're surprised why Thabo is not under and the mother. Now, the mother, yes, not the mother, the grandmother of Thabo, who gave birth to Thabo's mother. As I said, Thabo's mother was born in 1965. The grandmother was born in 1938. And she was a Bester also, because on the family tree, the Thabo's great-grandmother was a Bester. It was Elena Bester, who has since passed on. So the mother was a Magagula. Not a Bester. He was a Bester before, but when she got married, she's a Magagula. Now the mother said, in her own words, she said Magagula was working as a domestic worker, and the employer refused permission for him to go and register. I actually spoke to her yesterday. It was heartbreaking because she was very angry. She said some of us can wake up our mothers, and because she believed the mother was taking care of, as she said in her own words, she loved white children more than her own children. She was not aware that it was apartheid employment, where as a domestic worker you have got no rights. But the mother never took her anywhere near Home Affairs. So Thabo's mother herself was never registered when she was born. In other words, she had no birth certificate, she had no ID, she had nothing. Until when she was 37 years. That was in 2002. She then, in 2002, her mother, this lady who was working as a domestic worker who didn't register her, she passed on. And her aunt, younger sister of the mother, who is 2 years younger than the mother, decided 2 months later to take the mother, that is Thabo's mother, to take the mother for registration. She was already 37. In other words, they did a late registration of birth. And I'm sure you are aware, we have spoken about it, how tedious a process is, late registration of birth. So Thabo's aunt, who is still alive, is a Mabaso. This Mabaso came from there. I told you Thabo's grandmother was Magagule. But Thabo's mother's, mother was Magagule, who was Thabo's grandmother, in other words. But her younger sister, who is still alive, is a Mabaso. Now, when this lady died, Magagule, Macy Maria, who gave birth to Thabo, was taken at the age of 37 to Home Affairs, and she was then registered there as Mabaso. In other words, she took the same name of the person who's registering her. She forgot about being a Magagula or being a Bester and registered herself as Macy Mabaso. But when you go to Baragwanath 37 years ago, she's Macy Bester. But she took over. In other words, she forgot about her mother and all that and took over her aunt's name because the aunt was the one who was registering her. So she then got registered. She then decided here and there that since I'm registered, let me register my kids also. And she registered them under the same name of the aunt, under Mabaso. All the 3 kids which registered, they suddenly became Mabaso, no longer Besters. And that's why some of the things got lost. But she registered them, they got their birth certificate, they got their IDs. Now the question is, why didn't you register Thabo? She said, no, it was 2006, Thabo was 16, he had disappeared. That's the first time, that's when he had disappeared. And nobody knew where he is, and that's why the mother could not register him in any way. But she was able to tell us the school, which because when we met her, she insisted that Thabo passed standard 1. Obviously, we were very curious how a standard person passing standard 1 can juke doctors and all that, you know. Anyway, I also belong to that profession, so I was a bit jealous and shaking how a person who passed standard 1. But the mother insisted that as far as I know, he never went beyond that. We did go to the school which Thabo attended. It is in the south of Johannesburg. Lyre School, Danny Theron. Yes, indeed, it's true. Thabo registered there on the 14th of January 1997 without any ID, without any birth certificate. They just registered him with the date of birth, which is correct. 13 June 1986. It corresponds exactly with what is in the labor ward at Kisani Baragwanath Hospital. Thabo attended there, and it's true, as the mother said, and left that school in 2002. Now, this year, 2002, is very significant. It's the year at which Thabo left the school. But it's also the age at which this grandmother died, allowing the aunt to register the grandmother. So it's true, Thabo left that school in 2002. He was not in grade 1, as the lady was said. He was in grade 5, which in the past is called grade 3. So you can forgive the mother for mixing things up. She's an ordinary woman. Thabo went up to grade 5. There's no other indication that he went to any other grade since then, because he disappeared from the school. But it looks like from the mother, he disappeared only in 2006, 4 years later. The mother then only met him again in 2011 when he was arrested. That's when her first contact with Thabo came since the disappearance. So as I said, Thabo never registered with any Home Affairs at any stage. So the only place where you could find him, as police said, was in correctional services when he was an inmate. That's where you'll find his fingerprint and photo, but also in the South African Police Services crime data. That's where you'll find this fingerprint and photo. Otherwise, in terms of registration in the civil manner, the only other place where you could find Thabo Bester is Chris Hani Baragwanath Hospital. The records that are now 37 years old. So as we have said, because Thabo never took an ID, never got married, never took a passport in Home Affairs, he simply did not exist in our systems. So he doesn't have a passport at all. There's a story that he has got multiple passports. Thabo doesn't have any passport with Home Affairs. The passport he was found carrying in Tanzania appears to be an American passport. I've got a copy of it here, in the name of Tom Williams Kelly. Whether real, defrauded or forged, we can't tell, because we don't have American systems. But he never purported or showed any passport, which he said he got from us, because we never gave him any. Now that passport, in the name of Tom Williams Kelly, it never crossed any border at any official port of entry, whether air, sea or land. There's no indication that that passport was ever used. So we don't know why he was carrying it, but he never used it at any one time. So that's the issue of Thabo Bester. Let me go to Nandipha'S Maguduman, the doctor. We easily found her because she was on the National Population Register, birth certificate, ID and all. They are all there. She took her first passport in 2007 at the age of 19. This passport expired in 2017 and she was issued with another one the same year, which is due to expire in 2027. So the passport we gave in 2017 is still valid and is a legal passport of Dr. Nandipha'S Maguduman. And I must emphasize this just for educating both even with the public. We are saying we issued another one because people talk about renewing passport. Passports are never renewed. When it expires, just thrown away, you get a new one. It's not a South African law, it's the law of the International Civil Aviation Authority. They don't want to repeat passports because they said if you repeat the numbers, the chance of fraud globally are very high. So you throw it away, we give you a new one. So Dr. Nandipha'S passport, which she took in 2007, expired after 10 years. We usually give 10 years to adults and 5 years to kids. So we gave her that passport and she's still carrying it. It expires in 2027. Using this passport, which is still to expire, Dr. Nandipha'S left the country on the 9th of May 2022. It's more or less the same period that Thabo Bester disappeared. If you check, I don't know the significance of that. I just want you to check. But she left via Beitbridge border post. But she returned 3 days later on the 12th of May 2022. She entered via OR Tambo International Airport, and she was from Bulawayo. Since that time, the 12th of May 2022, Dr. Nandipha'S never used this passport to cross any border whatsoever. Since the 12th of May 2022, it was never used. I want to emphasize that. To cross any border again, whether land, air or sea, she never used it. When she was caught in Tanzania, she was found in possession of this passport, which expired in 2027, which she last used on the 12th of May 2022, coming from Bulawayo. She was found with that passport. But she was found with 2 other passports, and that's where the story of multiple passports come in. But those 2 passports don't belong to her. They belong to a Dr. Mereka Patience Martha Ntani. She was carrying her passports. Now, one of these passports she was carrying had actually expired on the 24th of July 2022, because we issued it to Dr. Ntani on the 25th of July 2012. So midnight on 24th of July 2022, it expired, but she was carrying it. And look, it beats us as to why she was carrying an expired passport. It has got no use. It can't be used around any border, because as I told you, passports are not only controlled by us because they get used in many countries. They are controlled by International Civil Aviation Authority, and the standard is that they must be machine readable. That means if you put it in any machine through any country, it must be able to read it. So any machine in the country will have read Dr. Nandipha'S, Dr. Nchani's passport, and realized that it expired. But she was carrying it. Whether she knew that or not, we don't know. The second passport, which also belonged to Dr. Nchani, which was found in her possession, was issued on the 10th of July 2019 and is due to expire on the 9th of July 2029. So it still have got a very long lifespan, this passport. Now, the first passport which we gave to Dr. Nchani, which he said has expired in 2022, the last time it was ever used was on the 26th of December 2020. And it was never used again until its expiry in 2022. Now, does Dr. Nchani has a passport? She actually approached the department in 2019 to apply for a passport when 2022 had not yet arrived. She applied for a passport, and of course we gave it to her. That passport which he gave it to her in 2019, she used it on a trip to Seychelles, departing on the 7th of July 2022 and returning on the 13th of July 2022. Up until now, it was never used. So there's a story that Dr. Nandipha'S, the one who is in jail, has assumed the identity of Dr. Nchani. I read it somewhere in the media. That's not true. She never, ever assumed that identity. She just carried the two passports of that identity, and she never used them anywhere. So we still don't know whether she was still going to use them or not, but she never assumed that identity. At no stage did she tell anybody that she's Dr. Nchani. So it's not true that she assumed the identity. She just carried her passport, one of which had actually expired. Now, before we give you a chance to ask questions, which I know, the first one is going to be about why are people taking many passports and why do we allow it? So before you ask that, let me tell you, it is not illegal to take many passports. In fact, many South Africans do have many passports. And it has got nothing to do with crimes. You can check around, you'll find many South Africans who are carrying a British passport and a South African passport at the same time, because South Africa allows dual citizenship. You can be a citizen of South Africa and another country. Something that I don't like, but it's there. And we are going to have to look into it. Now, that is when you carry a South African passport and another passport. It's not illegal. But is it illegal to carry many South African issued passports? No, it's not illegal. All you need to do is to give cogent reasons to the Department of Home Affairs why you want another passport when the one you are having is still in existence. You give reasons. If you are applying for another passport when the existing one is still valid, when it's still valid but lost, yes. If it is lost, you depose an affidavit with the South African Police Service, and you take that affidavit to come to Home Affairs and say, my passport is lost, please give me another one, here is my affidavit. So in this regard, that's exactly what Dr. Ntani has done. She deposed an affidavit to South African police in 2019 and declared that her passport was stolen. And with that affidavit, she came to Home Affairs. We gave her a new passport. That's the one that is due to expire in 2029 because there's got a 10-year lifespan. So this passport, which she said was lost, is the one that expired in 2022 and is the one that was found in Tanzania, in the possession, on the person of Dr. Nandipha'S. So that passport, which she declared it lost in 2019, has actually been found in Tanzania, but never used. Now, on the 27th of March, that's quite recent, Dr. Nandipha'S approached the police again, deposed another affidavit. But in this one, she was not stating that the passport is lost. That's the one we gave in 2019, which still is to expire in 2020. Let me not confuse you with this. But she stated that she gave it. She didn't say it's lost this time like the first one, which was lost but we found in Tanzania. This one, she said she gave it to Dr. Nandipha'S Maguduman and to Mr. T.K. Ngwana. T.K. Ngwana, you'll know, is the assumed name of Thabo Bester. She said she gave it to them because they were going to apply for her for a working citizenship in the US. I don't know much about this, but people who have applied for this working citizenship tell me that this is not possible, that you can send somebody. They say you must come in person. But she wrote on that affidavit that she gave it away. So now here is a story. It's yours. I'm just throwing it over to you. The passport which she reported lost in 2029 is found in Tanzania on the person of Dr. Nandipha'S. The second passport which we issued because that first one was lost is also found with Dr. Nandipha'S. I'm not sure whether you see where I'm getting to. You lose a passport in 2019, you take a new one, both of them are found on the person of the same person. In other words, the person who is having the passport you lost, you somehow miraculously or coincidentally give her another passport, this time legally, because she's going to apply for you. That's your story, it's not mine. You are the people who like running away with this type of things. You can run with it. Now, this affidavit which she obtained on the 27th of March, saying I gave my passport away. In the affidavit she says, I'm worried because I heard that these people I give the passport to have run away. I don't know what they are going to use it for. But on the strength of that passport, that affidavit, she came to Home Affairs on the 3rd of April to take another passport. Remember, she's having a passport which is to expire in 2029. Yes, that passport has not been collected yet in Home Affairs. It has not been collected, so she doesn't have it. That's the story of Dr. Ntani. Let's come to the Mozambican national. Some of the media people are reporting that the Mozambican national was deported together with the two. He wasn't. There was no reason to deport him. He's not in any of our systems. So we can't prove that he's a South African. If he's found in Tanzania illegally, we have got no business to do with him. There's no document, there's nothing which links him to South Africa. We are not even able to ascertain at what point did he meet these two individuals. So he is there in Tanzania. The Tanzanians will have to see what to do with him. So there are only two people who were handed over to Home Affairs. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for listening to our story. Thank you.
Thank you very much, colleagues. We are now coming to the interactive part of this briefing. We're gonna open up questions. We're gonna allow you to ask us questions. Kindly indicate your name, the publication you represent, and the person. Well, the minister is gonna be answering most of the questions, but we've got the panel of all of the other senior managers, including the deputy minister. So with that, without further delay, I see. Okay, I see 3 hands, 4. Okay, the first round will be taking the four questions. Thank you. Sophie, number 1.
Minister, I just want to find out when the team that went to Tanzania spoke to the team, particularly the South African citizens, perhaps including the Mozambican citizens, did they give an indication how did they cross South African borders? How did they cross the borders? Because they were in South Africa. And you have pointed out that when you look at the traveling documents they had, both were not stamped. And that's what Tanzania is also saying. In terms of South Africa, how did they cross the border? And also, did they give an indication where did they meet this Mozambican citizen? It might be beyond our borders, but did they give an indication? And when you ask Thabo, did he indicate how did he get this document that is classified as either authentic or fraudulent, because it's not your role to authenticate because it's an American document? How did he get this American document? And did they give an indication where they were headed to, because they were arrested at the border almost 10 kilometers to Kenya in Arusha? Did they share some light? And who assisted them? We are told that road or that route is being used for drug trafficking, human trafficking, illicit trade, including illicit financial flow, and people coming to South Africa, particularly from the Horn of Africa and areas where there are conflicts on the continent. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. The gentleman behind Sophie, yes. Please indicate your name, sir.
Minister Oren Singh from FFPLUS. I just wanted to find out what the department can tell us about Bay Bridge water. From what we understand, a vehicle that was partially paid for by Dr. Nandipha'S was found abandoned at Bay Bridge within Zimbabwe, and sometime towards August last year. That vehicle has been standing parked off at the border since then. And what we have in terms of information, which we're yet to verify, is that Leicester had used that vehicle to cross the border into Zimbabwe. And what we want to know is, does the department know whether this was the case, whether they had in fact used the vehicle to cross that border?
Thank you very much, Aaron. Muloto, and then we're going to come to you, sir.
Thank you. Moloko Mloto from NCOP. I think the first part, Sophie, when I asked it in terms of the how the two managed to cross the border, but I would like to know if you are aware as to when exactly did they leave the country. But you, as the custodians of our borders, when did you become aware that they have skipped the country? And after you becoming aware, what action did you take? But also, I think yesterday the head of the Judicial Directorate, retired Judge Edwin Cameron, did say that he actually believes that it was not necessarily or only the operational personnel who could have assisted Thabo started to escape from the Magabun prison. I know it's not your terrain there, but I'm trying to connect it with their escape from the country, them violating our processes as they leave the borders, where you have control. Do you suspect that, as the judge is saying that he suspects there are other people elsewhere who could have assisted this man? Do you suspect, given the reputation at Home Affairs, that you would be aware of issues there? Do you suspect that some of your officials, one way or the other, could have been involved in facilitating the escape of these two? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Muloto. Yes, ma'am.
Hello, Mariska Kusef from The Citizen. I want to find out, now that we've established that Thabo Bester doesn't have a valid ID or is not registered.
Sorry, I'm sorry, I got distracted. Can you start again?
Sorry about that, Minister.
Just with the name as well.
It's Mariska Kusef from The Citizen.
Thank you.
Okay. So now that we've established that Thabo Bester doesn't have a valid ID or is not registered, when will the department look at actually registering him and getting him a valid ID? And then my follow-up question is, should we be worried? I mean, how many other cases do we have in the country of inmates that are in the prisons? Yes, they are registered, they've got prison numbers, but I mean, if they would escape, you know, is there any documentation to actually follow up, you know, and find these people? So, is there other cases like that, and how will you guys prevent that from happening again? Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. Thank you for the questions. Minister, we've got questions from Sophie at CBC, Arun Singh from EWN, Muloto, and Mariska.
Thank you. So, Sophie, unfortunately, every single question you ask us is a matter of investigation by police. It's out of our hands. Once you escape illegally, it's no longer Home Affairs that must do investigation. We don't have that legal authority, because it means even crossing in other countries. So it's a police. It's like I've answered this question many times about Bushiri. That is being investigated by the Hawks and the police, and they clearly told us they are not going to tell us anything, because what they are investigating, they are going to present in court. I've got a big suspicion that they'll say the same thing about this. But it's no longer us who are investigating, because on our side, the only thing we can do and stop there is to see that you cross the border legally. And how do we know that? How do I know that all these passports never cross the border? I'm talking about, when I'm saying crossing the border, I'm meaning at the official port of entry. And there are 72 of such official ports of entry, as you know. 53 of them are land ports of entry. That includes Beit Bridge. 8 of them are sea ports of entry. 11 are international airport. How do we know that we never crossed any one of those? Because we are using a movement control system, which is automated. And so it actually records every movement that you are doing. Many of you might remember the report given by Dr. Lubisi, which we presented to the portfolio committee when they were investigating the issue of visas that were issued since 2002. If you remember that story, they examined 1.8 billion movements across the borders. 1.8 billion. It doesn't mean they investigated 1.8 billion people, but movements, a person can cross 10 times and so. And they were checking how many times did this person cross the border, come back. That's why we know about all these trips. Beyond that, there is nothing you can say. If you try to jump the fence, then we are lost. Because you are aware, we don't really have equipment yet of detecting anything. During the apartheid era, they had electric fences, and as you know, they had the army all over there, but somehow people were still able to illegally cross. I'm sure you know that. So if you have crossed illegally, Home Affairs will definitely not know, and the police will have to take over, because then that is a crime. Only when you are found and you must be deported, like these people get deported, the law in that country will never give them to police. They demand immigration officers. We did send a gentleman when police left on Sunday to Tanzania, but that gentleman is not working in immigration. He's just one of us in Home Affairs, and they will also not hand the person to him. That's why we had to dispatch Mr. Mujiri Matthews to rush there and fetch them. And that's the normal procedure. It's just that because this is a very different type of case, we just thought it will happen. They said, no, we stick to the rules. And they are right. Even us, when we deport somebody from Lindela, we never give them to anybody except the immigration officials in that country. We call the ambassador to identify, and we must hand them over to immigration officers so that it gets recorded there. If anything happens to them, legally we are covered. So the Tanzanians were doing the same thing, which we also do, and that's why we did not argue with them about it. But the matters, Sophia, are really done. I think you asked 5 questions, and all of them, yes. When did they give direct how they crossed? The police will have to find that. When did they meet the Mozambican? We are just saying we as Home Affairs, we have got nothing to do with the Mozambican. We don't know him. If he was here in South Africa, he was here illegally. But when did they meet him? The police will have to find that. How did he get the American document? I'm sure it will also be part of the investigation, and the first thing they will do is to show to the Americans whether it's authentic. I looked at it and somebody showed me an American passport. I tried to compare them. I'm not an expert, but that's why I'm putting all these weights as to whether it was defrauded, forged, and all that. I'm sure the Americans won't like to hear words like that about their passport. So they will come to our rescue very soon. We haven't yet taken it to them. Whether they again give indication when they left Tanzania where they were going to, it's also not a Home Affairs matter, and who assisted them. All those police will find, and if the issue of Bushiri is anything to go by, they will tell us that this is going to be part of their docket in court, and they might not want to release that information. Mr. Singh, this vehicle that was found abandoned in Zimbabwe, we don't have any records of it in the movement control system. We don't have any information about this crossing the border. But as I'm saying, we're still searching, and but we do not know. As I'm saying, we have got no evidence of them crossing the border. They must have crossed somewhere where all these things that Sophie is talking about, drugs and all that, are crossing, because it does happen along international borders all over the world. Mr. Muloto, when did they leave the country? I'm sure you are aware that question has already been answered. If we don't know where if in our records they never crossed the country, they never crossed the border at an official border, we won't know when they left. And when did we become aware that they've skipped the country? No, we couldn't become aware. We had no interest as Home Affairs to Bester and Nandipha'S. They were of no importance to us. We didn't even know about them, I must tell you, until this story broke out about them escaping, because there was no reason for Home Affairs to know anything about them. So that such people have left the border, we wouldn't have known. We usually know about people who have crossed the border if they are V listed. It's called V listing. If in Home Affairs we have got a suspicion about the criminal activities, about somebody who might cross the border, we V list them, so that when they arrive there with a passport, if they don't arrive with a passport, they just cross illegally somewhere, jumping a fence, that V listing won't even help. So we never V listed them. There was absolutely no reason to do so, unless police did come to us and say these people are in jail. We suspect that one day they will cross the border. I mean, Thabo was sentenced for life. So if police came and say we suspect one day he will escape and cross the border, we will have got interest in them, but we never had any interest. As to Dr. Nandipha'S, she did cross borders, as I've said many times, using an official passport and coming back, and there was nothing wrong. As we said, it happened on the 9th of May. She crossed into Zimbabwe as an ordinary citizen who have got a citizen's passport. She came back on the 12th via OR Tambo, just like me and you. And remember, when people leave with their passport, you don't ask them where they are going to. We don't ask such questions. So there was no way of us knowing. And as to what action did the Department of Home Affairs take, we took no action, and I'm repeating. Our interest in them started when the story broke out. And our biggest interest was not that they've crossed the border or not. When the story started, nobody knew that they crossed the border. Our interest was about identification, because we know identify people. Firstly, that we heard about the corpse in a police cell. We know that corpses need death certificate. If that person was not Bester, our first interest is in the death certificate. Who is this person? And what does the death certificate look like? That was our first entry. We're interested in that because we're seeing it and knew that it has to do with us. And our second interest was when multiple passports were mentioned in Tanzania. When it was mentioned that they are in Tanzania. And our third one, when multiple passports were mentioned. Before that, there was no reason for us in Home Affairs whatsoever to get interested in them. And the judge, yes, I listened to him. Mulugo, yes. There's no way we can put this beyond not only Home Affairs officials, government officials. They are known. This issue of corruption is known from police, from immigration officers, from Home Affairs officials. It's not a secret. And part of the reason why this lady exists is exactly that. If you check Advocate Moise, why she exists and why her post was created, if you can check, it is the only government department, Home Affairs, is the only government department that has got the DDG counter-corruption. The other government departments, you'll find the junior person, director, risk management, deputy director, where it's even high, it will be a chief director. Home Affairs is the only one that has got the DDG of counter-corruption, precisely, because these things happen, and they happen quite often. And usually when they do this type of things, they work with police. You may remember when we arrested 6 Home Affairs officials in Libombo in 2021 who were doing tricks with a Mozambican hawker passport. There was a police officer there who was bribed for 100 rand for that matter. And we arrested him. Yes. Last week, is it 2 weeks, at OR Tambo? Yes. Where we arrested an immigration official. He was working with a police officer, where somebody from Ethiopia brings passports which are about to who stay in South Africa is about to expire. They gave them to this policeman. Remember, a policeman is in uniform. He goes past, and nobody can ask him questions. And he enters the airport. He calls this immigration officer into a small office or a small kitchen, and he starts stamping those passports as if the people have left the country. You are aware that we arrested them. So police officers and Home Affairs officials usually work together. And when we arrest, you arrest together. So we can't put it beyond them if these people cross the border officially. But at the moment, they are not there on the movement control system. By the way, we did catch somebody who is very junior but very rich in Limpopo in a place called Skoror, who owns 5 cars, including a Porsche and a Mercedes-Benz, but is a level 6 worker, because he was interfering with the movement control system, changing dates, and we caught him. But so I'm repeating a lot. If they helped him to jump a fence, we'll not know anything about it. But if they helped him to go officially through the border post, then it means there is somebody senior enough to evade the movement control system. It has to be very senior, not a junior person. A person who has got the authority to be looked upon as a senior law enforcement officer who is not prone to doing wrong things. That's the only one who can afford to dodge the movement control system. Maritska, this is very important. It's a question we learn everything every day. I learned, to my surprise, that there are lots of people who are in jail who have got no IDs. Because if police found you committing a crime, and for some reason you never came to Home Affairs deliberately, because you don't want to be recorded. Remember, once you arrive in Home Affairs, your fingerprint will be there. There are people who deliberately don't want their fingerprints, but judges still sentence them, and they sentence them without any IDs whatsoever, because they are not known. Some are illegal immigrants. You think if you arrest those Zamazamas, you will find any documentation on them. When you arrest a Zamazama, there won't be any. So we understand there are many. And this brings us to the story of Thabo Best. We have explained why her mother could not register him. It's clearly understandable story. There's logic in it. But he himself, and this is my theory, I haven't proven it, that when he escaped because he was still 16, I think he fell into the hands of criminals. And criminals are known to use young kids whose fingerprints do not exist in Home Affairs. Because your fingerprint only start existing on our system when you are 16. Thabo escaped just at the time he was supposed to take an ID. My thinking, unless because he looks like a brilliant fellow, somebody warned him that don't go anywhere near a Home Affairs. Wherever you steal, your fingerprint must not be found. And he did his best. That is not registered anywhere. In correctional services, he had no option. When they arrest you, they take your fingerprint. In the police, he had no option. That's my theory about him, that they told him that. That's why you are aware. I've just signed new identity system. Yes, new management identity system for South Africa. We need to change the way people are identified. And in that new management identity system, we are proposing that IDs must be taken at the age of 10. And well, you'll ask, why not 9 or 8? We just thought at 10, you find kids who have just finished the foundation phase at school, who have got some bit of understanding. And if we start getting their fingerprints then, you are aware that Home Affairs did also propose at some stage that we need to be allowed that when you come for your birth certificate, you must also take your DNA. And there was a lot of reaction. People don't know what they said. We are, intruding too much into privacy of people. We can't do that. I made to understand some countries are doing that, because if we're taking DNA at the source, life will be very much easier for us. The only thing we have done up to so far is to open Home Affairs office in hospitals. I'm sure you are aware that we have done so. One of the biggest offices where we have opened Home Affairs happens to be Chris Hani Baragwanath Hospital. But 37 years ago, it was not so. If it was, I'm dead sure that nurses and Home Affairs officials will have encouraged Macy to register this young fellow. But now we do have an office at Home Affairs there, and it's working very well. In fact, in all the Home Affairs offices, in all the hospitals where they deliver more than 5,000 babies per annum, we've got a full-time Home Affairs office now as I'm speaking. And we are still moving to other hospitals to try and cancel something like this. So when we ask people to register birth in the first 30 days of life, we're trying to avoid this type of situations which we are faced with today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Minister. I have got a request from the floor that when we ask questions, we request that you actually switch on your mics, also because there are people who would like to hear your questions. So going forward, we request that you switch on your mics. We're going to take the second round of questions. We've got, I see, 5 colleagues. Yes, Zoleka from Newsroom. Kaya, that's SABC. Number 3. CC number 4.
We'll allow them to introduce themselves so that I know who's asking the question.
They're going to introduce themselves before they ask the questions.
Oh, yes. Okay.
Yeah. All right, Zola, please.
Thank you very much. Zola Sholwana from News from Africa. Minister, do you feel that lack of action by the police and the Justice Ministry somehow inconvenienced your department, or rather the work of your department, Home Affairs?
Is that the only question?
That's the question.
Please switch off the mic and then we allow Kaya.
Hi, good day, Minister and your team. It's Kylie Shakumala here from SABC News. Minister, when you established the BMA, one of the very critical issues that you often spoke about was the issue of addressing the concern of the porosity of our borders. So with this particular case of Thabo and Nandipha'S, do you think that somewhat, it's a bit of an indictment on the department because you have this system now, but yet you have this particular incident?
Which system, by the way?
The Border Management Agency.
Yeah, it's not a system, it's an agency.
Okay, thank you so much. But maybe while we have you, Minister, you know, with the issue of the Guptas, do we know, as much as we do know at this particular point in time, there might be citizens of Vanuatu, do we know if, reportedly, as it was seen in Switzerland, if they were using the South African passports? And maybe just the last one.
The Guptas?
Yes. Maybe just as the last question, Minister, I know the case is still pending in court, but for my colleagues, you know, they're working on the ZEP story. Do we know if there is any potential settlement that you may reach with the ZEP applicants? Thank you so much.
Sure.
Good morning, Minister and team. Alex Mitchley from News 24. Minister, I understand that the Thabo saga is under investigation by police, and I also understand that you say that there was no record of them going through an official port of entry, unless perhaps that system was tampered with at the time. Be that as it may, given the notoriety of a case like this, or in fact any case where there's a suspected illegal crossing, have you yourself as a department launched an investigation to check whether that that monitoring system was tampered with? Perhaps, you know, one could check during the time that he's suspected to have broken, to have escaped prison and obviously then fled the country, whenever that time frame was. I know you say it's under investigation by police, but surely Home Affairs at the borders should also be doing their own due diligence to ensure that their systems were up and running on the day, and that you know, nobody had played a role in their escape. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex. The lady next to me, please introduce yourself.
Good morning. Can you see me from Times Live?
Sorry? Can you see from Times
Can you
Live?
see me from Times Live? I just have two questions, and I'm not sure who addressed it, but just for clarity. Of the 4 children born to Esther or Mabaso, Thabo was the firstborn among them, and then the second one, can we just clarify for some of the minister's marriage stages? The minister referred to her as Thabo's customary wife, but then...
As Thabo's what?
Customary wife.
But then apparently at some point records showed that she was permissible marriage to Dr. Just clarify that.
I'm sorry, I'm struggling to hear. Can you explain?
The first one is whether Thabo was customarily married to Dr. Nandipha'S. And 2, what is the status of Dr. Nandipha'S' marriage to the husband? Well, what's the husband's name?
So I want to, of the children, of the 4 children.
Yeah, no, that one we've had. It's the.
No, I didn't. What did he say about the 4 children?
Oh, okay. So just hold on one minute. Thanks. The first question is whether Thabo was the first, or rather, whether Thabo was the firstborn.
She said he was the firstborn. I heard that.
Yes, that is what she wanted to. She wants an understanding too.
Okay.
Of the 4 kids, where does Thabo rank in terms of birth?
Okay.
And then the last question what is the current status of marital status of Dr. Nandipha to the
Yes.
to Magud,
Yeah, so the minister referred to her as Thabo's customary wife. But at some point, the court said that she was still in a civil marriage to Dr. Nandipha.
Okay. And then there's a gentleman.
From Network 24.
Sorry, what's the name? Raymond.
Network 24.
Okay.
And now when you get to the border, your passport needs to stamp. So what was the date that was stamped on the passport that it was found on
Okay, that's the date on which the Thabo Bester and the Nandipha crossed. Whether these were stamped. I think we already covered it in your statement that they were not stamped. At least not through our borders. And
No, allow him. Let him explain.
No, I just want to know if the passports that you found in the possession was stamped.
if the passports were stamped, the ones that we found on them. Yes. Okay, I see Muloto, and then we're going to take you as the last in this round.
All right, thanks. Minister, of course, you've already said that Thabo Bester is not registered in your either of the three categories within Home Affairs. Presumably, he doesn't have an ID number. Now that it's known and he's incarcerated, are you going to be giving him an ID number and an ID card? But also, have you been able to determine, given the character of the guy, have you been able to investigate within the Home Affairs to determine if there was ever a fake or fraudulent ID issued in his name? But then, lastly, I want us to go back, Minister, because you did say you had no interest as Home Affairs regarding either of these two. And that would be very interesting because Home Affairs is part of the Justice, Crime Prevention and Security Cluster. And these people escaped late a few weeks ago. They escaped the country a few weeks ago. At that time, we assumed that government working together with other departments, Home Affairs part of this security cluster, should have activated alerts within this department to say, this man escaped from the prison, police are on him, Home Affairs, put your acts in order. For you to say you had no interest gives an impression that you as the security cluster don't work together. If you do, on this particular matter, certainly you did not work together in terms of ensuring that he never leaves the country. Because at this point in time, you can't even tell whether he jumped the river or he used the Bay Bridge border posts assisted either by delinquent officials or in whatever form. So the issue here is that the impression you are giving us, Minister, is that as government, as the cluster, we surely did not work together on this one.
Right. Thanks. Minister, we've got another question from WhatsApp. Sakina Kamendo from SABC is asking whether a death certificate was issued for Thabo Bester after the fire at the Mangaung Correction Facility Center. Thank you. Oh, sorry. Yes, ma'am.
Katel Sokoto from Kaya FM. Minister, you did outline your concern about the potential that there's a lot of prisoners or inmates who are not registered. Is there, now that the Thabo Bester saga has really shined a light on the problem, is there going to be a concerted effort by the department to address this, and what might that program or initiative look like?
All right. Thank you very much, colleagues. I think for now, we'll probably, after Minister has responded, just get a sense if whether we still have questions. Minister, we've got the current round of questions. We'll invite you to come and respond. Thank you.
Yeah, the first question, whether the lack of action by the police inconvenience us, let me not make judgment about what the police did or did not do. The matter was with the portfolio committee. Let them be the one to make that judgment. I'm not in any way having the authority or the power to put a judgment on a sister department. So let's wait and hear what is the verdict of Parliament. The issue of BMA, that we deal with Boras Potters, I think is a question from Kylie. Yes, Kylie said that's the job of dealing with BMA. And maybe I need to take you back. The borders were fortified like fortresses during the apartheid era, with electric fences and everything, and armies and soldiers all over the place, and even farmers who were having farms around the borders armed. In 1994, when President Nelson Mandela felt that we are no longer at war with our neighbors, there's no need to live with them like that. That system was removed, and it was not replaced with anything. That's not a secret, that's what happened. But you are aware that more than a decade ago, more or less 12 years commission, yes, the structure called NCOP, National Intelligence Coordinating Committee, which coincidentally Dr. Mashia Pato, as the commissioner of BMA, was chairing. It was coordinating crime intelligence, military intelligence, what you call military intelligence, civilian intelligence, and what is the one where you are working with Financial Intelligence Center? Yes, and the Financial Intelligence Center, they were all coordinated. They do what is called intelligence estimates. About 12 years ago or so, in their intelligence estimate, they showed these things of borders, that it was a blunder to remove what apartheid was put in there and replace it with nothing. They didn't just say it's a blunder, they said something must happen. And they came with an issue of Border Management Authority, BMA. Now, BMA took 10 years for the act to be passed, precisely because in Parliament there's a huge difference among individuals there in Parliament, not only from different parties, but I suspect even within parties, about the way South Africa must manage its borders. I'm sure you hear it every day. Even amongst you, there are such differences. Whether we need to have open borders, we are in one country, and we are sisters and brothers, we shouldn't be traveling each other, we should not even be demanding passports from each other. There are those stories, and because of those arguments, it took 10 years for the BMA to get established. Meanwhile, the situation was getting worse. The BMA has been established, unfortunately, at the time when the economy of the country is not doing well. On the 14th of July, we hired the first cohort of 200 border guards. I'm sure I don't have to tell you. There is no way that the borders in South Africa can be taken care of by 200 border guards. Well, it's in the process of recruiting another 400. We are still very far from doing what the Border Management Authority was established for. It's the beginning. It's still a baby. Still crawling. And if you look at the Border Management Authority Act, we also emphasized that it also has to use technology, not only human beings. It must use technology like drones. It must use what is this technology we use to detect motion sensors and all that. It doesn't have those yet. We've discussed with the Minister of Finance. He has not refused, but we have not yet done that. But at the ports of entry themselves, if you have been through our borders, you'll notice that on this side of the border, the buildings and the structures there do not look good. On the other side, they look very good. I mean, I went to Oshuk border post. The Eswatini side is brilliant. On our side, I even jokingly said, their side is Santen, our side is an RDP house. The way it looks, precisely because during the apartheid era, there was no good relationship with the neighbors. They were not respecting each other. That is why In line with the Border Management Authority, we are establishing what we call one-stop border post. The bill of which is coming out for public comments. I've just signed it yesterday, only yesterday, for the border management, what we call one-stop border post. One-stop border post includes a massive injection of infrastructure at the borders in a way that it will, there will be security features and all that. Now, we don't have to pass that act for the one-stop border post to work, that massive infrastructure. I've already visited all the neighboring countries. We've agreed, we've chosen a model because there were 3 different models. They were choosing it. What were we waiting for? We're waiting for Treasury to give us a go-ahead to issue what we call request for proposal, RPFs, where we're asking the private sector, because it's a PPP. In other words, the model is going to be built by the private sector. We've already costed it. It will cost something like 6 billion rand. And the private sector said they are very interested, especially the truck owners, because they said that money, including whatever will charge them when they pass, is nothing compared to the amount of time they spend there or the amount of corruption that takes place. So as part of the SPP, the Minister of Finance has just told me last week that he signed the letter. I've not yet received it. That means the letter giving us permission to do requests for proposals and go out. And when you put that infrastructure, what do you put? You don't only put one infrastructure. You put 1 lane for trucks, 1 for pedestrians, 1 for this, and you put a lot of technology, including X-rays. You don't X-ray the truck. It must drive through an X-ray machine. And we are made to understand that X-rays are outdated now. We need gamma rays. Gamma rays that will see not only a still physical structure or human bones or all that. That will also see money, cash. That will also see liquor, That will also see that you are now crossing with alcohol. That will also show liquids, That we do not have. So it will be, that will also see cigarettes, by the way. That's the gamma ray. The people who deal with these things have already presented to the commissioner. We're just waiting for the Treasury to give us requests for proposals. I'm eagerly waiting for that letter. So at the moment, I'm not going to stand here in front of you, Kylie, and claim that now that there's a BMA, our problems are over. No, they are very, very far from being over. We are still in our infancy. For instance, there are people who raise issues that we hear this BMA thing around the land borders. What about the sea? They tell us of, ships that, run there and get our fish and all that. We don't even have one single covert. So when we established the Border Management Authority, we clearly told the Ministry of Defense that as far as the sea is concerned, we're not touching it. We leave it to you until such time that we are satisfied about our capacity at the borders and at the airports. Before that, it will be very ambitious to believe that a baby like the Border Management Authority, which is still trying to build staff, to build a capacity, will have that. So we can't claim that now that they are there, the borders are not going for us. And it's not that they are not doing much, just in December only. Just during that period of December, they were able to catch 13,000 people who were crossing illegally into South Africa and turn them back. They didn't even have to come here, that we spend money taking them to Lindela and hiring a jet or whatever, hiring a private airplane to take them back home. We don't have to do that. They stop them. And you can see the amount of money which they've saved us. And they've stopped about, just in December, they stopped 53 vehicles which were about to cross and go to other countries. And I'm sure many of you might know that once your vehicle crosses to Mozambique, you won't get it back. Even if we go to Mozambique and find it, they don't even change the number plate. Even if you go there, you won't get it back, because there's a law that is called innocent buyer. That whoever has got that car, he bought it innocently, knew nothing about it and all that. And so the only protection we have is to make sure that the car doesn't cross. And the Border Management Authority, in its infancy, have already achieved that. But it will be wrong to stand here and lie to South Africans that we have got this authority. Nothing will ever go wrong at the borders. It's not yet time to say so, if to claim something like that. Whether Guptas are using South African passport, yes, they are. I just can't tell when, because when you use a South African passport away from us, we won't know. Our movement control system doesn't show where if you crossed into China and all that, it doesn't show. But they have got this passport. Remember, they got citizenship. They got citizenship of South Africa, which was eventually determined through Parliament that it was, they got it irregularly. And there's an official who was in Home Affairs who was punished for that. By the time Parliament arrived at that determination, the officials have already left Home Affairs to another department. I personally wrote a letter in terms of the public service rules to that other department to say this person is responsible for giving the Guptas their citizenship early, blah, blah, blah. That's why now we change processes. If the Minister of Home Affairs decide to give you a citizenship before time, in other words, if he gives it faster than it's supposed to, I'm supposed to report to Parliament immediately. I don't know whether it's within the first month or after giving it. You report to Parliament and say, Kaelishe got citizenship before time, these were the reasons, and you give them so that there's transparency. It was actually to deal with the issue of Guptas, but at the moment they are having them. I know there's a debate whether we must take our passport back to the Guptas. Before we take our passport back, remember I refused to give the other one a passport when it was full. I refused, went to court and we won. But the question is, if we take our passport, you can't take your passport, sorry, before you take away the citizenship. We have got to start there. If we take away the citizenship, do we have got the right to bring them here? I still have to ask legal minds about that. We are chasing them because we believe they belong to us. So if we take away that citizenship, do we still have any right over them? I'm sure lawyers will tell us, maybe because of the crime they've committed. But I can assure you now, as I'm speaking, they are South Africans with a South African passport. The reason that we refused that other one who was renewing it was that he's a fugitive from justice. And so we are not obliged to give him what other citizens are getting when he's running away from accounting as a citizen. That's how we won it in court. Your question about potential settlement to reach, I don't know what settlement is this. The ZEP case is still going on. I've never heard about any settle. What are we settling for? I don't know about it. I don't know whether I understand your question.
I think, Minister, my colleague, well, she's working on the story. She wanted to know if there is, other than just the legal process that's underway, are there any other avenues that you're pursuing to try and reach an understanding of some sort regarding the ZEP?
To reach an understanding with who?
With the Zimbabwean citizens who are concerned with regards to this.
I thought that understanding was reached long ago, Kylie. Firstly, we said, and this is what the media usually repeats wrongly, that we are chasing Zimbabweans out of South Africa, and they're asking us what will happen in June, where will the kids go, they are attending school. I hear those stories. When we did what we have done, whether the court find that wrong or not, our intentions was very clear, that we've got 17 different visas. The ZEP was a special dispensation away from the Immigration Act. It was not in terms of any act of parliament. It was just a sort of brotherly, if I may put it that way, help, because the people who were coming in were not coming as economic migrants. They never said so. Wherever they were going, they were saying we are running away from Zimbabwe as asylum seekers and maybe even refugees. The refugee reception centers, and we've got 5 of them, were overrun. One of them in Messina, it was completely overrun. Where I went to Messina when I was still an MEC, having nothing to do with Home Affairs, I found 1,000 people on a soccer pitch in Messina who could not be accommodated anywhere in the in the Musina Refugee Reception Center. So it was difficult, and we gave them ZEPs and said they are temporary, and it kept on being renewed. And our question is, for how long are we going to renew this? Can't we stop it and tell the people to apply for regular visas like anybody? And we've got 17, like any person from any other country. Or like Zimbabweans, people believe here, once you are a Zimbabwean, you are here on a ZEP. There are many Zimbabweans who are here on other visas, and a lot of them, I mean, if you look at study visas, they've been given to Zimbabweans more than any other nationality, looking at the whole world. 35% of them have gone to Zimbabweans. Scarce skill visas, same thing. Work visas, about 15% went to Zimbabweans. Relative visas, about 14%. So not everybody is ZEP, and I want to emphasize that. Now we said the ones who are carrying ZEP, how do we migrate them to the other things? We can't migrate them automatically. There's no law that allows that. They must apply. But there are two things which we have asked them to do. And I personally wrote them letters one by one to ask them to do that. Number one, when you apply for a general work visa, you go to the Department of Labor. Department of Labor is supposed to prove in terms of the law that there's no South African who can do that work. If there is a South African who can do that work, the Department of Labor won't give you that certificate, and Home Affairs cannot give you a permit to come and work here. They won't give you a work visa. We depend on a labor certificate. Now, what have I done to ZE people? We ask them to apply to be exempted from going to the Department of Labor. Just apply and tell us, I'm already at work, I've been here for so many years, blah, 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 and I want to apply for a regular visa. We give them exemptions, and I've written in other ways to allow them no longer to go to the Department of Labor because it will be a lot of work. And you give them a letter so that when they apply for a visa, they attach that letter and say, the minister has allowed me. And I've allowed many of them. I'm signing them every single day and dishing them out. Once you receive such a letter, you look for the visa you can apply, you want to apply for. I can't choose for you. Some will say, no, by the way, I've already been married. And in terms of South African law, if you are married, you have to apply to be a South African by virtue of your marriage. Now, when ZEPs were given, there was a special condition that you are not allowed to apply for any other permit. You are not allowed to. And I think in terms of the Constitution of the Republic, telling a person that who is married and say other married people from your country can get this benefit, but you can't get it. Others came here to do first year in whatever degrees. They've now, because it's about 12 years or 10 years, they've now got PhDs in scarce skills. And yet the condition was that you can't apply for a scarce skill. Many of them have already broken those conditions. And why should we allow people to exist by breaking laws and breaking conditions? Meaning these conditions don't work. And that's why we decided that no, they must go to the other visa. So the settlement that is being asked for, or that you are proposing, I thought we made it in that way. And there's a story I hear all over about babies. At no stage did we say the Children's Act is suspended or put aside. And the Children's Act in South Africa is very, very, very clear. And the courts have already ruled on them that on any decision you take on an individual, if children are involved, you must do it in the best interest of the child. If you do it in any other interest, no. You may remember recently, there's a Russian woman here who got defrauded visas to enter South Africa. The judge ruled that there is no proof that she was involved in that fraud because it was given by an immigration officer. Yes, but the main thing she ruled was that even if she defrauded, there are already children involved. And once children are involved, whether she did fraud or what, you must consider the children. Which means, and it's not something that I like, which means there are a lot of thugs which are around South Africa, and they are sitting here by virtue of their children. That's why many women are being targeted to make babies in order to stay. I'm sorry to use that word, but it's true. Because we have got many instances where of this type of things happening. So I can't get rid of that Russian woman despite fraud, because the judge said, did you consider the children? So when we did the ZEP, we never said we are going to suspend the Children's Act. No. So these stories that are going around, I don't understand them. The only thing that disappoints me very deeply, Kylie, very, very deeply, I was depressed for the whole day yesterday. I listened to our lawyers arguing this case. I was shocked because I don't understand. No. If you have got a lawyer who represents you like that, I didn't understand their reasoning. And they are telling the judge what we did not say or what we did not do. And they are representing us. I thought, oh my God, what is this? I've never seen anything like that on earth. You know, I thought maybe even if I was to represent myself, I would have done better, honestly. I'm not a lawyer, but that's what happened yesterday, and it shocked me and it broke me. The things that are being said there about us is not what we said, and it's not what we have planned. Unfortunately, we have got to own it because it's said by our own lawyers, and oh my God, God help us. Oh gosh. Alex, whether we check whether the monitoring system has been tampered with, that's what Advocate Moise do all the time. It's called the movement control system. I've already told you about it. When I said we arrested somebody from Limpopo, it's because he was tampering with movement control system. It's checked all the time because that's the only instrument that tells us that Sophie Mugwena is left through this border post, Sophie Mugwena is back through this border post. So we check it all the time, yes. And that's why we're able to tell you that they never went through any border post, whether ASC or what, because it doesn't reflect anywhere on the movement control system, and nobody has tampered with it. The only thing that you can do to tamper with the movement control system is never to go through it. That's the only one we know. Because the moment you put your passport there, yes, the moment you put your passport there, because it's machine readable, we don't depend on the stamp only. No, that stamp is in your passport, but your movements that you went in and out is left in the movement control system, which is automated. So the only way to avoid it is to go around it. The person who I say we caught tampering with it, he was changing the dates of entry so that your visa mustn't come to an end. That's all he was doing. To change that you didn't come in January the 3rd, you came on January the 30th, so that you have got more days. But to stop it, you just have to avoid it. And you can only avoid it if you are senior enough to undermine the junior officials there. That's why now that after Good Friday, the commissioner went to Beit Bridge, where most of these things are happening, to be there personally so that he can supervise what is taking place there. Kanisile, yeah, you ask whether Thabo Bester is a firstborn. Indeed he is. On this family tree, Thabo is the firstborn, as I said, born on the 13th of June 1986. The second born was on the same day but in 1988, and that's what confuses people. Unfortunately, she passed on, this lady. She's no more. The third born was born on the 17th of September 1994, and the last was born on the 20th of June 2000. So yes, it's true that Thabo is the firstborn, and the other siblings were arrived later. Oh, actually my copies are here. Thank you, Advocate. The second question, is Thabo customarily married? We don't know. We have got no evidence of that she married customarily to anybody. This is how the Customary Marriage Act works. The Customary Marriage Act was passed in 1998. And because many, many South Africans were already married customarily and not recorded anywhere, the law gave room for them to come and register in Home Affairs. Meaning you can marry somebody customarily away from Home Affairs, as long as you come later to register that marriage. And the law says you only need 3 things. You need to give a proof that lobola was paid. You need to give proof and even get affidavits of the people who were negotiating lobola. You need to prove that families did meet. And lastly, you need to show that there was some form of celebration, whether you slaughtered a goat, maybe even a chicken, or maybe mostly a beast and all that, that there was something about families recognizing that these people want to marry each other. If you can give that proof, you take it and run to Home Affairs. Then they register that marriage. But last year, there was a judgment which has somehow changed that, not for the worse, but in favor of women. There's a lady who was married before 1994, customarily. The husband never registered this marriage until he passed on. He died without registering it. And a woman somewhere appeared on the scene and said, no, this my husband, this was my husband, he was not married to this woman because the marriage was never registered with Home Affairs. The judge ruled that even if she's not registered in Home Affairs, if she can still produce the 3 things I've mentioned without going to Home Affairs, that is declared a marriage, a customary marriage. And that woman was able to produce the 3 things, and the judge passed her marriage as valid. So that will apply, but we don't encourage people to have to go through court. So in the case of Thabo Bester, we all know, because none of those things came to us. Nobody came to register such a marriage. If it happened outside the realms of government. We don't know anything about it. The status of Nandiba to Maguduman. Yeah, it is one of the problems we are solving in Home Affairs. When you go to justice to divorce, it is not automatically linked with Home Affairs National Population Register, that divorce. We won't know if we have divorced until you take the decree of divorce and come to Home Affairs, personally. So it's only now that we are reworking our systems so that it must come automatically. That means the day the judge put the gong and say, look, this relationship is dissolved, it must automatically appear in Home Affairs. At the moment, it doesn't, unfortunately. So as far as we know, in the NPR, these 2 people are still married. If they went to court to divorce, then they didn't bring any divorce decree to us, and we wouldn't know. So as far as we know, they are still husband and wife. Raymond, you are asking if passports were stamped. There's no way they could ever be stamped if they never even reflect on the movement control system. There's no way, because they were never presented to us. And then Ntatemoloto again, whether we can give Thabo an ID, yes, we certainly can. Because as I said, the policy we are using in Home Affairs is that you must register your child within 30 days of birth. There will be no problem whatsoever. Once you exceed 30 days, it's called late registration of birth. It's a very, very tedious process. But if it goes even beyond a year, that is very, very tough. Why is it tedious? We are going to demand lots of documents because we don't know you, we don't know who you are. Does anybody know you in South Africa? You'll have to go to the crèche which you once attended. If you ever did, they must write an affidavit. You've got to go to a school. You've got to go to church. If you ever attended Sunday school, you must go to the ward councillor if he knows your family or anything about you. You must also go to Mushate and ask the traditional leader there if they know anything about you. And then when you finish collecting all those documents, you give them to a tribunal in Home Affairs. They screen through them and decide whether they make sense, and they must give you an ID. So we are asking people to avoid that inconvenience by opening Home Affairs offices in hospitals, as I've already said. Now, if you look, we helped Thabo to get all that information. We went to Christiani Baragwanath Hospital in the labor ward. We found the documents. We went to the school. We found we have even got this registration number in 1997 when he went to school. There's no reason that we can't submit that to the tribunal in Home Affairs and give him an ID. Now, what is next for us to find out? I don't know as I'm sitting here, whether we can give somebody an ID if they don't want it. I've not been able to establish that. I don't want to see DLI to the nation. Yes, but if Thabo wants an ID by next week, you could have it. Because both passport and smart ID were able to give them within 5 days to 13 days. So I still have to establish if Thabo says no, because as I said before, I suspected he never wanted it. Because he wanted to live, yes, invincible. He made himself invincible to everybody. So we'll have to find out from legal gurus, can we force him to take an ID? But if he needs it, we can give it to him now. Are there any fraudulent IDs issued in Thabo's name? No, not that we know of. If it's a fraudulent ID, it definitely won't be there on the National Population Register. And because we never found any fraudulent ID in his possession, we won't know. But in as far as we are aware in our systems, there's no, fraudulent IDs, Muluk, you usually detect them because they don't put them in the National Population Register. And there's a reason. In the past, they were putting them because Home Affairs official who issues an ID or a death certificate or a birth certificate, they were using passwords to get into the National Population Register. And they'll just come and say my password was stolen, even produce a medical certificate to show that on the day my password was used, I was with a doctor, I was sick and all that. So Home Affairs realized we are not going to win that battle. We changed it. We no longer allow passwords. We have got a system called BACAM, Biometric Access Control Movement. You use your fingerprint. So any document that has come fraudulently will go with your fingerprint and find out who issued it. So because Home Affairs officials are avoiding that, when they issue a fraudulent document, they don't go anywhere near the NPR. And that's why we know immediately that this thing doesn't exist. Sakina, yes. Sakina, wherever you are. No, Mulugo, again, you came with the issue of JCPS cluster. Yes, we did meet on what you call. It doesn't mean that because we work in the same cluster, we know everything that's happening in other departments. They need to ask us. We can't just guess. As we are sitting that, do you have somebody you are suspecting and all that? We came into the picture and started working together when these people are said to escape from jail. I told you, we even started before the cluster approached us on our own. And we had a joint meeting to find out where the gaps are. Sakina, wherever you are, I remember Sakina was interviewing me and he asked me about this question of a death certificate, whether I know about it. I said, yes, I do, but I won't divulge that information because I didn't know what was going to happen. Now we can divulge it. The body that was found in that cell, is cell number what, 35 or what, as they call it, the body which you found in that cell, banned, was issued a death certificate. And Home Affairs issued a death certificate on the strength of a form called DHA 1663. This is the form that doctors must fill. No Home Affairs official can ever, whether through BACAM or wherever, issue a death certificate without the doctor certifying you dead. Because how do we know? Home Affairs official can't certify a person dead. You don't have skill in that direction. The doctor must fill that DHA 1663 and say this person has died. Now, Home Affairs received such a document from a pathologist who conducted the post-mortem and say you must issue a death certificate. But as you'll expect, that body which was in there because they thought it's Bester, the death certificate is issued in the name of Bester. That's the death certificate that Home Affairs issued. But, and a big but, there was no ID because Thabo Bester himself never took an ID. So even the pathologist will not have written an ID. And when Home Affairs finds somebody with no identification, when they issue a death certificate, it's handwritten. We don't put it on the National Population Register. We issue many of those for people who are from other countries, foreign nationals, who pass on in South Africa. We don't put them on the National Population Register. Even those who have been registered, we issue a handwritten death certificate. It's only about the new Identification Act where I have mentioned that things are going to change. But for now, if you are not a South African and we have got no documentation and we have got no ID, we issue a death certificate. It's handwritten, no ID number. That is that certificate. Now that we know that Thabo is alive, Home Affairs will have to go and annul that death certificate. It has got no use. But we do not know where it was used. Because as we heard from police, the bodies that Dr. Nandipha'S was stealing, she buried Mill and Vors and all that instead of those bodies. But remember, there's also an anomaly or a gap in South African law. You are not forced to take a death certificate to be buried in South Africa. It's a big gap in the new law I've just said, I've found yesterday when we discussed with the public. We are going to make it a criminal offense not to take a death certificate of somebody. Many South Africans take death certificates because they need insurance, stokvel, and all that. Those who don't need anything, they just bury. So we don't know where that death certificate was used, but it's written in the name of Thabo Bester. It has got no ID, and Thabo Bester is still alive. But it was issued on the strength of a DHA 1663, which was signed by a qualified pathologist from the Department of Health in the Free State. I'm not sure whether it's a private pathologist or not, but it's a pathologist from Free State. Sakina, I'm sure you got the answer. Will there be a concerted effort to register inmates who are inside? Yeah, this one needs a big homework, because I've already given an example. If you are a Zamazama and you have been arrested for rape or whatever, or for this illegal mining, what do we give you an ID for? And what identification do we give you? Because once you give you an identification, we then authenticate your presence in the country which you did illegally. You are aware that mostly we deport such people. So the question is, can we put them on the National Population Register? No, we can't. Which ID are we going to give them, and for what reason? Because what they've done is not something that is desirable for the country. So it's going to be a big homework, that one, for us. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Minister. I am not sure if we still have questions. I think this would be the final round.
Any full bottle of water?
This would be the final round of questions. We've got 2 questions from the floor, and after that we will wrap up the briefing. And both of them are from the... Sophie, please.
I want to return to the issue of the Yehudah. Minister, you say they are still using South African documents. Are you really saying there is absolutely nothing that can be done? Because if they can use these documents abroad to continue with, doing business with other countries. We were recently grey-listed, and it is because of such issues of the country not being strict enough to ensure that whatever documents that belongs to the state of South Africa are authentic and cannot be abused. The systems can't be abused. The same with Bushiri. I would want to know, is he still a South African citizen, as we were told somebody in Home Affairs helped him, and that would mean he's still in possession of a South African document? And lastly, the criminal cluster. it was one of the weakest points or link when the violence happened. If you recall, last year, was it last year, which threatened the security of the country. And one thought there were lessons learned.
Very much.